Hey, all right. Usually I wait for people to join, but the kids are napping now. Oh, I got an audio loop. Hold on. There we go. Jenny's out getting a massage, and I have some time while the kids are down, so I figured quick stream, perfect time. At least till the kids wake up, and then I gotta go. I didn't realize how much I've been relying on trend lines lately, but look at that on BTC. But you guys have seen some of my trend lines were incredible. Like with if you were on the stream the other night with NKN, this was kind of cool the way I came up with this. What I had said, I don't know, some of you guys were probably on the stream, but we had dipped down, touched here, dipped down, touched here, and we were like riding over here. But I drew this trend line after just these two touches on the hourly. And I said I would bet anything we're going to dump back down and touch this trend line again. And I only had this touch and this touch. So normally I wouldn't draw a trend line unless I had 1, 2, 3 touches, right? That'll make a trend line. But just because I had these two, and I could tell by the rough trend, the way that it was going up here, I could see that there were two trend lines. There was this one down here and that one down there. This one down here hadn't even formed yet. We only had these two candles that wicked down to it. But the primary one was up here. I could see that with the naked eye, and I just sort of extrapolated in my mind. I didn't have to draw it out. I didn't have to do an equation. I just sort of traced it out in my mind and said, all right, well, since we had these two touches, I'd be willing to bet the lower trend line is going to end up right around here somewhere. And then sure enough, it dipped. And then as soon as it did, and I got an alert on my phone right when it hit at that level, it started coming back up. I entered in, and boom, 11% run. So that's a perfect example of how I came up with a really great low-risk trade with breakout potential. So I've been saying NKN for a while had huge breakout potential. It did here. This was my last NKN entry, right? The first entry was down here, broke out, came back down, and then ended up launching exactly like I thought it would. It did over 20%. And then it retraced all the way with the BTC dump, and I got stopped out, even of my long-term position. And then I saw that it was coming back up. I knew it would break out again. So I was waiting for the right entry. I would have entered down lower, but I wasn't paying attention. So once we were in the live stream the other night, if you guys were there live, and any of you guys remember that, you can let me know in the chat, on YouTube chat. But I said live, I bet it's going to come down and touch this trend line. And sure enough, it did. So I didn't even know there was no trend line there. I just sort of extrapolated it. So you have to think outside the box. And that's one really good example where you can anticipate where a trend line will be in the future. So when you have a really strong trend line, you're like, oh, it's going to bounce here. It's going to bounce here. It'll probably bounce there. It'll probably bounce here. It'll probably bounce here. When you have a strong trend line, you can expect where it'll bounce. If you don't have a trend line, but you can extrapolate where a trend line will be in the future, how cool is that, right? Like, how awesome of a tool is that? It's essentially, that's why I joke about having a time machine, because the way I trade, every concept that I trade with is kind of built around the idea of anticipating where things will be in the future. Where will supports be in the future? Where will trend lines be in the future? If you could do that, you know the future. It's great. Same thing with my Ichima model here. So we broke into the cloud, got rejected at the top of the cloud, bounced off the bottom of the cloud. So the fact that we hit this rough trend line area that I anticipated 2 days prior on a live stream, the fact that we bounced right off the bottom of the cloud, that was a perfect entry. That was a low risk. Because as soon as we hit the bottom of the cloud and started coming back up, I knew that if I entered there and my stop loss went right below the bottom of the cloud, the probability of it going down and failing through the cloud is pretty low. I had about a 75% chance that this would keep going up. And sure enough, it did. Once it got to the top of the cloud and the 222 EMA, I knew it would hit resistance, so it did. It came back down, but then it had support from the other EMAs in my model, the 55 and the 99. So you bounce between those EMAs, the top of the cloud, the bottom of the cloud, all those 5 lines right here, top and bottom of the cloud, and the 3 EMAs make up my Ichima model, right? My 5 dynamic support and resistances. So it'll bounce between them. So it went up, rejected from the 99, support from the 55, broke through the 99, support of the 99, rejected from the 222 in the top of the cloud, support from the bottom of the cloud. So each of these reversals tend to be right around where one of those Ichima lines is, unless it's obviously outside of Ichima range. So here, once it got above all those supports, it just broke out. So that was a really good low risk entry. It's now risk free. It's dipping, it's retracing now. I'm not sure if I want to just leave it risk free or if I want to take some profit. So the daily still looks really bullish, but even on the daily, look, went up and got rejected right at the top of the cloud right here, just like it did before, top of the cloud. And then when it dumped, it never got to the bottom of the cloud. It has to break through the top of the cloud here to really break out. The last entry, we were coming up against this huge cloud right here, and I thought we would run up against that wall. Sure enough, we did. Then we got the big dump with the BTC dump. So right now, I'm not exactly sure how I want to play it. It's risk-free for now. It still looks bullish. It may be able to push up and go all the way up to the top of the cloud over here, and then it either breaks out or gets rejected. I might have to come back to that later and figure out how to play this. It's retracing now based on the 4-hour, but I'm not worried about the Stoke model because it hasn't been that consistent on NKN. So that was one of the recent big trades. And then Tomo, which was a monster. I also knew that was really bullish. Again, the Ichima dynamics were holding really well. Bottom of the cloud. 55 of the 99 EMAs providing tons of support. When it finally broke through, the 222 gave a lot of support. So on the way back up from the 222, we were coming up against the other EMAs in the bottom of the cloud, and I figured if it breaks out, it's going to break out big. Because at that point, all those resistances were huddled together. So if it gets above them, they all become support. What happens when it got above them? They became support. After that point, it never got much lower than that general line going across right there. And then we ended up turning in, we got into this ascending triangle here, and I thought that's a potential breakout, but it was like it's a hidden ascending triangle, which doesn't have the same odds as a regular ascending triangle because it had gotten broken earlier. We ended up coming down on the BTC dump. Stop barking! But then we held. So the fact that BTC dumped, everything else crashed, but this actually held really well, and it just moved sideways for a bit. I probably should have entered here when I noticed how strong this horizontal support was, but I didn't. Maybe we talked about it on a live stream where I said this looks like it may break out again. I don't remember, but I didn't get more Tomo. I had actually sold some on the breakout when it was only up like 20%. So I only have maybe 40% of my original position left because I had taken profit a couple times, but still, my original position, I'm up, well, 50% was the max. Right now, I'm probably still up 40%, 35% on that remaining position, but we just reset on the hourly, so we might start to go back up here. Let me see how the 4-hour Stoke looks. 4-hour Stoke looks like it needs to correct a bit more. That's been a pretty, yeah, the 4-hour Stoke has been a pretty decent predictor. Actually, yeah, the last few times we've gotten this high on the Stoke, we've gotten a correction, right? So right here, we're correcting. This time right here, we were overbought on the Stoke, and then we had a nice correction. The last time before that, over here, we were overbought on the Stoke. We had a relatively small correction and then a quick early reversal. It's been really overall bullish, but given how we're not riding the EMAs anymore, we've just sort of shot up. You know what? I'll probably just liquidate the rest of this position. I'm up 35% on the remaining part. I already took profit on the rest of it. I'm going to sell the rest of my Tomo because I think it needs to correct. I'm pretty sure it's going to correct further. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. I'll find another trade to get into. But right now, from that position, I'm up, 35%. Now, if you got in my original Tomo trade with me and you never sold, you're up 90%, and the top of this run would be 113%. And this entry as well, I got in, it dipped down ever so slightly to the 99 EMA and then shot up and never looked back. Just really, really low risk, high return entries. And for those who are newer to the group, the whole point of my strategy is these trades, right? Like if I get into, because I'm really good at managing risk, right? So all of my trades, I have a stop loss, which is 1%, 0.5%, 1.5%. Sometimes it's 2.5% below my entry, depending on how good of a trade it looks. Like in this case, I took up to 4% risk on it because I figured this was not only a high probability breakout call, but something I could hold longer term. So if it dipped a little bit, 2 or 3%, I didn't want to get stopped out right away. So I took a larger amount of risk, but I didn't put quite as much money into it because I took more risk. But a lot of my trades are really low risk, 1%, 0.5%, 1.5% risk. That way, when I get into a trade, if it fails, I'm only losing 1%, 0.5%, 1.5%. I'm not taking a huge loss. But when my trades do break out, I'm making 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% profit because these breakouts are massive. So by tracking the trend lines, by identifying each of my dynamic supports, entering right on those, I'm able to place my entry right above a really strong support zone, like all around here. Every time it's bouncing off the 55 and the 99 EMA is a potential buy. So right here, when that wicked down and bounced off the 55, if you could buy in there, great. When it bounced off the 55 here, if you could buy in there, great. Those each of my dynamic supports are insane. It's riding right along the 55 EMA. And the 55, 99, and 222, the reason I'm the only one who uses those It is trial and error. I essentially used every combination. The 20, the 80, and the 200, the 50, the 100, and the 200 EMAs. And I would try MAs, EMAs, SMAs, until I eventually came up with what worked best. And hundreds of hours worth of practice just yielded the 55, the 99, and the 222. And just look, they're insanely strong supports. So that's Tomo and NKN. That's exactly how those traits came together. And if we spot a similar formation like that, or if you guys spot a formation that looks like that, shoot me a DM or tag me in the chat. Let me know. I'll look at it with you, and we can enter it together if it looks good. But they're not hard to spot. Winnie and the guys that know how I trade, my strategy so well, they all the time, Bobby D in the chat, like the mods, and other people in the chat, just regular members, tell me all the time to go check out a specific setup because they know exactly what I look for, and they'll see something like this, like, oh, look at the 55 EMA. It's a really strong support for Tomo right now. I'll jump in and look at it, and sure enough, they're right. I jump in, and I'll make a 50% trade. So you guys help me find these things, too. It's not just like some miraculous talent I have, although I do have a fucking time machine and a huge dick. So let's take a look at BTC. I'm really bullish on BTC. I talked about this a few times on the live streams. So I came up with this trend line. I made a joke on Twitter. I was like, nobody else had this trend line. Obviously, some people do. But the main reason I developed this trend line was actually based on the daily, by doing a linear fit model of the top of the cloud on the daily. I came up with that trend line. That trend line didn't exist, right? So there were no previous taps where it hit that level. Never happened. But by doing a linear fit based on the top of the cloud, because that's a primary support of my Ichimo model, look at the top of the cloud and how strong the support has been the entire time, right? The other night it dipped into the cloud and somebody in the live stream was like, oh, look, it's dipping in the cloud on the daily. Does that mean it's going to dump hard? I was like, no, it barely dipped in. There's just a little wick into the cloud. That's not dumping into the cloud. Like if it were to get down to below 9K, then I would say, all right, you're in the cloud. Now there's a big danger of dumping all the way down to the bottom of the cloud. I got to blow my Jushinaz. Hold on. So now it picked up speed and now it's holding at the top of the cloud. It's like right on that support. It could still dump. If it does dump into the cloud, it's going to be a big dump. But we have this support, that trend line that I came up with based, again, on a linear fit model. Just think back to math school, back to elementary school or middle school, whatever, when you were doing geometry and everything. Coming up with a linear fit is going to show you essentially the center line, right, of a bunch of data points. So if we know that there's support right here, and there's support right here, and there's support right here, and there's support right there, if you just roughly estimate that and say, all right, if I draw a line through all of those supports right down the middle, that's a linear fit. So just knowing that, I was able to come up with a trend line that ended up being the perfect trend line for this bounce. Like absolutely, I couldn't have asked for it to be more accurate. The first one I came up with wasn't as good, and then I had to tweak it a little bit, but this really ended up being perfect. So now that trend line is holding us up. We're above the downtrend line, which everybody had. This downtrend line goes back, I don't even know, for quite a while, back at least, what, a month? Oh, this was the beginning of July. And no, I think this one actually keeps tracing back. This might have been that same trend line that went back months. Oh, no, that was a different one. Okay, so this huge trend line went back months. Even like a year, and then it kept getting broken. So that trend line, if you were to extend that, you'll see that's broken, right? So it's all going through that area. This trend line no longer applies. This newer, shorter term trend line is what I was watching. That plus the bottom formed this pennant, right? This triangle formation, a symmetrical triangle, which can break up or down. So normally I would say, all right, in a symmetrical triangle, it could go either way. So then what do? Then you need to figure out if it's going to go up or down. If it's 50-50 going up or down, you need to look at other tools. Do we have supports that may indicate this trend line at the bottom? Essentially, when you have a symmetrical triangle like this, if you think about it, it comes down to what's stronger, this resistance at the top or the trend line support at the bottom. If the resistance at the top is stronger than the trend line support at the bottom, then it's not going to break up above the resistance. It'll break through the support first, right? If this trend line support is stronger than the resistance at the top, then you're going to break through the resistance before you fall through the support. That's a really easy way to think of it, right? So we popped through the resistance right as we got into this apex where the two were converging on each other. That's when you're going to get a high probability of a breakout move. We got above it, and now we're looking good. We're holding strong as this is now a support. So now we have this line is now a support, and this trend line is now a support. So now we actually have a trend line that should trend up if we end up breaking out. So again, it could have gone either way, but when you look at other strategies and other models, and I look at the daily chart has had a lot of accuracy using my Ichima support. So if you look right here, just in the last couple months, this big dump bounced right off the 99 EMA, one of my major EMAs that I use, right? This big dump here bounced pretty much right on top of the cloud, one of the major dynamic supports of my Ichima model. And then we got back up, and the 55 EMA was a strong support for a while. And then when it did fail, where did we get support? Right at the top of the cloud. So all of that tells me since the cloud is trending up, since we have this really strong trend line that I came up with a linear fit model to obtain, I had a reasonably high level of confidence that we would move up. So what else can I use to determine if we're going up or down? Let's look at one of my other strategies, how I use the stochastic oscillator. So the daily oscillator has turned quite bullish. We're trending up on the oscillator. Remember, when this oscillator is going up, we're getting a pretty big move up. When it comes down, a pretty big move down, usually, not all the time. And then it went back up, and that was this big move up, right, from bottom to top. And then this whole correction down right here was this swing down. Now we crossed over, and now we're going back up with a pretty strong trend. And then the kicker, which makes me extremely bullish for a big breakout, 10K, maybe 13K. Probably not 13. We could get up to the high 10s or 11K potentially. We could break 10K this time, is the weekly. The fact that the weekly has confirmed turned bullish as of 2 days ago is a really strong indicator. Now, sometimes you get the crossover and then it crosses right back and it doesn't stay bullish. Obviously, that can happen. But most of the time, if you look at it just from the probability of how often it occurs, look at the last several times. This entire swing up, right, was perfectly aligned with this swing up on the Stoke. This entire correction to the bottom was perfectly lined up with the price. This swing up with the Stoke was the exact bottom all the way up to the tippy top of the price. And then this correction down lined up perfectly with this correction down. One of the other strong indicators is the fact that this move up was really bullish. This correction down was pretty weak of a correction. That suggests that there's so much support here that this big dump, this correction, didn't give us one of these huge dumps. It was a very small, moderate dump, and you could see a lot of wicks where the price is trying to shoot down, but it keeps pushing back up higher. That's an indication of support. That's why a doji, right? If you're going down and you get one of these doji candles, for those who don't know, just to draw it really quick, a doji is when you have the center of the candle, the body of the candle is one piece like that, and then the top and the bottom have wicks like that. When you hear the term doji, the reason why that's a potential reversal is because if you're going down and then you have a doji like this, what that tells you is they keep trying to dump. The price keeps going down, but every time it does, it gets bought right back up because this is where the open and the close is. That's the current price, right? So if you get a quick wick down and then it gets bought right back up, that's an indication that there's a lot of buyer support down below. So based on that, this all looks really bullish. So when I factor all that together, I come up with, all right, my Ichima model on the daily, my stochastic oscillator model on the daily and the weekly are both extremely bullish. We have a strong bullish trendline support based on the linear fit model from the Ichima dynamic support at the top of the Ichimoku cloud. Based on all of that, I'm going to bet that this symmetrical triangle is has a higher probability of breaking up than down. Plus, you have the added benefit of knowing that it's pretty low risk. My entry was here. My stop loss is only 0.75% below my entry. And if it does really dump into the cloud, it's going to be a really big dump. So I want to get stopped out pretty quickly. Once this trend line on the top of the cloud fail, is it possible that there could be a quick wick down to here that'll stop me out and then it goes on a run? It happens all the time. Scam wicks are part of the game. It's possible. The probability of it happening is probably 5 or 10%. So I'm going to take my odds. There's probably an 80 or 90% chance that doesn't happen, if not more. All in all, I'm extremely bullish. And based on the weekly specifically, this could be one of these much bigger runs. It could be a pretty small one, but it's very possible that it could be one of these bigger runs that pushes up to 10, 11, maybe even the high 11s. Then the reason why I'm bearish for a big dump later on is because the monthly is quite extended. So I don't have as much of a data set on the monthly. There's not that much data to work with. This is the OKEX chart. Let me switch to one of the other BTC charts, and I can show you what I'm thinking. You just hide everything. There's obviously too much stuff on this chart to make sense of it. This one goes back much further to 2017 at least. So in this case, this entire dump was the Stoke resetting. This entire pump was the Stoke running up. This dump right? Perfectly lines up with the Stoke resetting. This pump right here lines up with the Stoke going up bullish. Now, we are high on the Stoke. We're pretty high. We're not overbought. We're not going to dump tomorrow. And this is the monthly model. There's still 11 days left in this candle. So if we go on a run now, we could go up to 13 grand over the course of 11 days. And then when that candle closes, the next candle could be a big red dump candle, and that'll be the reversal down. So it could happen in 11 days. We could have a full green month candle after that. So we could have 11 days of this one green, and then a whole bullish month going all the way up to 13 or 14 grand, and then reverse and dump. But at some point, we are going to dump because the stochastic has to reset. It's a momentum oscillator. So you have all this momentum going up. Eventually, you get to the point where you can't hold it and you have to dump. That's what happened here. We started moving up, and we almost reversed and crossed over bearish, but we picked up again and continued the bull run, the recovery at least. So that's why I'm still very bullish on there being a dump. There has to be a dump. It can't just keep running unless we had 2017 energy, which is never happening again. I mean, I suppose it's theoretically possible if we had like wide adoption of Bitcoin or something. If it became the official currency of the United Nation of Chaz or some shit, who the hell knows? But there's going to be a dump, and I'm basing that essentially 100% on my Stoke model on the monthly. So I don't have a hardcore analysis to explain why, other than this stochastic model has never been wrong on the monthly based on the amount of data that I have. So I don't have 1,000 candles here because you can only go so far back. I could probably do a BTC chart that goes back pre-2017, but it won't be as accurate because we didn't have nearly as much trading. We didn't have all the institutional money coming in. It was an entirely different market back then. We didn't have as many, swings. You would just go on bull runs that would last for months at a time. So it was a much different environment. I wouldn't consider that data as valuable, but just based on how it's looked so far, I have a reasonably high expectation that we are going to get a dump. And even if it's not a huge dump, it could be a smaller dump, but we are going to go down. Before that happens, though, remember, I always talk about this with different time frames. The monthly tells me we're going to dump. The weekly tells me we're going to run up. The daily tells me we're going to run up. So all that tells me is we have to run up until the daily and the weekly and the monthly, when they're all bearish at the same time, then we can come down. But right now, it's very, very bullish based on the weekly and the daily. Yeah? Everybody on the same page? No. Okay, just going back to Discord. Okay, not closing NKN. So I said I'm gonna have to come back and figure out what to do with NKN. I'm not sure yet. Man, it really looks like it wants to correct more. I'm just hoping. I was thinking instead of dumping right now, giving back some of my gains, maybe I'll just let it ride and see if we can hold at the Ichima supports, right? Because we have so much support there. So, I mean, this is a personal decision. So for me, I'm making my NKN trade. It already is risk-free. I have my stop loss at my entry, right? So my trade is risk-free. My stop loss is at my entry. I can't take a loss on it. But I'm still, even though it's come down quite a bit, I'm still up 6.5%. So either I can sell now and take 6.5% profit, or I can just let it ride and see what happens. So for me, personally, I can let it ride because I don't need that 6.5% profit I'm up a lot on Tomo. I have a lot of money in BTC right now, and I'm pretty confident that that's going to go well. I have other longer term positions that have been picking up speed. I'm going to get into some new trades today, which I'll share with you guys. My ONT trade is still up. Where's my ONT trade? I haven't gone over that. My second entry stopped out, but my original position is still up, and that's risk free. So this is an example where it originally broke out. I moved my stop loss up to my entry, so it became a risk free trade. And it came back down, and look where we got support at the top of the cloud, one of the Ichima dynamic supports. It dumped again, and then we got support from the bottom of the cloud. And if it went a little further, the 222 was there as well. So I held my ground. I have a risk-free trade from my original entry. I'm only up a couple percent on it, 3.5%. But I'm still bullish on it overall that it can keep going up more. So I'm going to let it ride. Same thing with NKN. With NKN, I'm going to let this ride. But if you are up 6.5% and that's a good profit for you, just sell it. You could sell it. You could take your 6.5% profit, right? You don't have to do what I do. We're radically different. I do pretty well. I don't necessarily need to take out every profit. And, I can gamble a little bit. If you're not in a position where you can gamble a bit with your trades and take more risk, then don't set a stop loss where I set my stop loss. Set a stop loss where you're comfortable with the amount of risk. Don't stay in a trade that I stay in when you need the money. Don't hold a position because I hold it, or don't sell a position just because I sell it. Because if I sell a position because I just want to close it and I want to put the cash into something else, that doesn't mean that you should close it. I can tell you whether or not I think it's going to go up or down. I think NCAN still could go up because of all the support we have here, so I don't want to sell it. But also, I'm willing to take that risk because I don't need to take the 6.5% profit right now. So make sure you're making decisions for you and not just copying what somebody else does, right? So I'm going to let NKN ride. This 222 is a really strong resistance. It got tested on this dump down, so it's a strong support now, right? But we also have the 55, the 99, and the 222 all together. So if we were to keep correcting, there's a really good chance we can make a big bounce off of those supports and continue upward. The fact that the 4-hour wants to correct normally would be a pretty bearish indication, but look what happened last time. The 4-hour wanted to correct, we barely moved down before going back up. Then it wanted to correct, we went down a little bit, and then we came back up. So sometimes, like I've said, when the model's like this and it's perfect up and down, and it matches up perfectly with the price, then the stochastic oscillator is an amazing tool. When it starts doing this and it starts zigzagging back and forth, it's not very accurate, so I throw it out and don't really use it. So I'm not worried about the 4-hour stochastic model on NKN. It's insignificant to me because it's not accurate right now. If it starts getting into one of these nice smooth rolls again, right, where every move up and down is a perfect prediction of the price, then I'll start using it. But for now, I'm not using the 4-hour Stoke model on the NKN trade. H-bar, Bobby told me to get into last night, and I didn't. I had gone to sleep, and of course it's breaking out now, but it's correcting a bit, so it's really, really overbought with the Stoke oscillator. The last time we didn't get a huge correction on that because it is overall quite bullish, but I might jump in if we get a little bit more of a correction. Same thing, the 4-hour model doesn't really do us any favors here. I will, let me check the baby monitor. If anybody has any questions, type them out in the chat on YouTube, because I have that up on my screen instead of Discord. Yeah, Winnie's been telling me about a couple. I'll look at XTZ, a couple DeFi projects specifically that he's been tracking. So I'm going to check those out. And I'll let you guys know what I think about them. But there are definitely some DeFi coins with massive, massive potential. They've been going on runs like nonstop. So I'm going to throw some money into them. I mean, I love my low-risk trades with big breakout potential. That's my thing. Day trading these things, and even longer-term holds, not day trading, but just buying and holding some of these, like Tomo has performed extremely well. But my thing is entering when I'm like right at the bottom, so there's virtually little to no risk, very, very low risk. So I'm not going to get all in on those things, but for some of the DeFi coins that have just come out that could go on massive runs that actually have legitimate applications, I'd be happy to throw like a little bit of money into each one. I think it's to pick like 2 or 3 that you really like. It's worth it to throw some money into them, because if you get one of those 500%, 2,000% coins, right, that goes on a super run, you want to get a piece of that pie, you know? So it's obviously worth it to put a little bit. You just don't want to overextend yourself and put more than you can afford to lose into something that's much higher risk. The way I trade is very low risk. That's obviously a much higher risk strategy. So I wouldn't advise anybody to go too crazy with it. It's pretty much gambling at that point. FET was another one that I should have gotten into again, but didn't. And then comp, had a trade, came down, barely stopped me out. I had a falling wedge, and then I was setting up a trade here when it started breaking out of the falling wedge, and I don't know what happened. I got busy. I left the computer for a while. I'm kind of pissed about it. I was watching this falling wedge, and I was all excited to share this with you as a potential sick trade, and I got it as a longer term hold and ended up getting stopped out for a bigger loss, but I didn't put a lot of capital into it. Now it's fighting to stay above the 55 EMA. I'm going to see if it corrects. In this case, the Stoke has been pretty accurate on the 4 hour, so I'm going to see if comp comes back down before I get back in. Somebody wanted me to look at XTZ. Yeah, we could take a quick look. I haven't really looked at anything today. XTZ is still, it hasn't stopped dumping. I tried to get in up here on those supports, and it just tanked straight down. There's nothing that's a potential good sign that I can see right now. Let me see. Higher. I like the 4 hour, to be honest. That cloud and the 99 EMA right there is similar to like my Tomo trade and some of my other trades, where I said when you dump and you have a big correction and you're coming up against this wall on the front of the cloud, that's usually a really, really strong bounce zone. This is one of those secrets that I've told you guys about. This zone right here, correction into a wall on the front of the cloud, is like an incredible opportunity to get in and potentially get a big bounce. So I actually do like that. That's the first thing. The hourly just looks like it wants to keep dumping. There's no real supports here. There's nothing to give me an indication that it would hold. It's sitting on a rough support zone now. 274.5 roughly is the next support. Let me just see. I'm kind of curious where the fib retracements are. Yeah, that was such a nice wave too. Really perfect Elliott wave formation. There's our ABC. Oh, it's weird. I just realized I like haven't drawn Elliott waves in so long. I don't know why I haven't. So let's look at the fib retracements. All right, so it's down. The 382 was a pretty good support. The wick held right there. It was holding at the 382 for a while, then it failed. If that 50% fib retracement could be a potential support, and it doesn't necessarily have to go all the way down to it, but look at the daily. I will check it out. So this is interesting. So that 0.5, that 2778, is right where the top of the cloud is here. That was good support from that last dump over here too. But I think it's entirely possible that this really is that 99 EMA might be the lowest. It may dip all the way to the 0.5. I don't even think it has to. It could definitely just stop right here and start moving up on the next candle, which starts in an hour. This candle could go back up, but I think it's more likely that this 4 hour candle would finish, because the hourly Doesn't really look like there's no indications of it reversing right now. The Stoke is still kind of bearish. It hasn't been that accurate lately on this entire correction. Usually it's more accurate on the way up than on the way down, and we'll start doing that. RSI is pretty low too. I'm not seeing the RSI start. Oh, maybe a little bit. Is it starting to trend up a tiny bit? Some bullish divergence. Ever so slightly. Like the tiniest amount of uptrend, it looks like. So like that would be completely across, and you can see it's ever like 2 pixels up, which is an indication of a potential reversal, right? So if the RSI doesn't get much lower than it is right now, that would be a good sign as well. I can't do much with this. The volume's low. The hourly Stoke isn't that relevant here, but the 4-hour, again, pretty low on the Stoke. The Stoke's been all over the place. I'm not going to really rely on the stochastic model for this trade for XTZ, but the rest of it I do like. From a pure Ichima perspective, the 9090 EMA on the top of the cloud really is nice. And it's actually pretty I mean, if I were to buy at the current price, I put my stop loss 2% below my entry, I would have the 9090 EMA to protect my stop loss. Now, the only problem with that is it's very possible that it can dip down to that 0.5 and the top of the cloud. So if I were to buy in now and place my stop loss below the 0.5, my risk would have to be a 3% risk, right? My stop loss would be 3% below my entry. That's a little high. So I'd like to get in lower than that. If I could do that, I'd be very happy to get in. I just don't know how low it's going to go. Is it going to go all the way to that 50% fib retracement in the next hour? I don't know. It'd be nice if it did. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set a couple buy orders, I think. SMZN said major resistance on BTC on the way up. We'll take a look back at that. I'm just thinking aloud here. All right, so I'll look at RSI in a minute, Win. What were you saying on the daily on XTZ? Is that what you were talking about? Who said that? Where? What tops? Here? Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean that the from here through this prior resistance is now a potential support. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That trend line. It was a resistance, right? So what he's saying is this was a really strong resistance, right? Got big rejection, tried to push through again, big rejection, back down, and now in this attempt to push through, and once you go through a resistance, it becomes a support, right? So now on the way back down, a lot of the time, that's why when you have like an ascending triangle formation, a lot of the time we break out above the triangle, come back down, and test the top of the triangle again. That's very, very frequent where you break through that resistance and then you test it as a support before it continues upward. That's actually kind of interesting. It lines up perfectly with the 50% fib retracement, so I'm liking that as well. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that I have to throw out the stochastic oscillator from this trade entirely because I really like relying on that. And to be honest, the daily does kind of look like it could still come down more. But the Stoke has been all over the place. And just based purely on an Ichima model, I really like this. I just don't know how to enter. I can't enter now. If I enter now, my stop loss has to be 3% below my entry. I'm not risking 3% on this. So, let me see. 2825. If I were to do that, And my stop loss is at 276 roughly. I'd be risking about 2.3%. All right, so let me clear out some of these old ones. That was a sick breakout run. That was like the best XTZ trade I've had in a while. No, never mind. It's only 7%. Where was the big one? Before, when I had a huge XTZ run. Oh, it was way before. It might have even been before Corona, or maybe I deleted it. These are like tiny when you're zoomed out. It's funny. Oh, that one's tiny too. All right, now the chart should be a little cleaner on the right. This last one was instant stop out in the middle of the dump. All right, so now we got a cleaner chart. If I'd risk a little over 2%. Probably not 2.5, maybe up to 2.5. All right, so roughly, if we can get close to the prior low, I'm willing to pay a little bit more. So let's say 2.825 plus or minus a little bit, right? So this doesn't have to be precise. But if I pay roughly 2.825 as my entry, and I'll go as high as like 2.83 roughly, yeah, 2.83 to 2.82 in that range. 2.83 to 2.82. I'll set a few orders there, and then I'm going to set another bigger order down in case we get a quick wick down, right at 2.795. And that'll be if it does get a quick wick down there, that'll be the potential big money maker, because that would be a really sick entry where it would be like right on top of the support, and that way if it bounces, it would be almost exactly at the bottom. Oh, here we go. We're dipping. I'm gonna do my orders right now. Hold on. Okay. I just bought it back up a little bit. It got in and sent right at my entry. So exactly at my plan at 2.825, and even a tiny bit below 2.824, 2.823. A couple different orders got bought up in that. And now I'm placing an order at 2.785. Okay. And then I'm actually putting more. I'm going to do the order. I'm placing an order at 278 and 2.785. I have a couple different orders that I'm going to have set with stop limits. In case it hits it, it'll just instantly trigger. Okay, and my stop loss I'm setting around 7.55. So I'm risking a little under 2.5%. All right. So again, this right here, great support structure. The way that daily trend line comes right through here is perfect. Who was it that spotted that? I don't remember, but thank you. So that's perfect. So we have that going right through the top of the cloud, pretty much exactly where that 50% fib retracement is. That's the main support zone. We also have this downtrend and the 99 EMA. Plus, majorly, it's the top of the cloud is the most bullish thing about this. There's not a lot here that is bullish to somebody that doesn't use my model. So if you use my model and you use Ichima and you say, all right, the top of the cloud, this is one of those magic spots that Jesse looks for where he gets a big correction that goes right into a really strong wall of a green cloud on the 4-hour or the daily that could launch, then you may say, all right, this could potentially launch. I'm going to get in. Most people don't really see anything bullish here other than maybe the 50% fib retracement is probably the only thing they see as a support. There's really not much if you're looking at the hourly. So this could be a potentially really great trade. We'll see. All right. I'm not looking at KuCoin coins right now. What else did you tell me to look at? Oh yeah, we were going to look at RSR and then look at the resistance levels for BTC going up. So let me just do RSR really quick. It's on Huobi with USDT pairing. And it's probably BTC pairing is also only on Huobi. Is RSR, that's the ticker, right? It's not like RSS or something like that. It's not on KuCoin, it's only on Huobi. Is that right? Winnie? Let me just go over the BTC really quick. Just confirm, Winnie, when you get a sec that RSR is only on Huobi. Okay. Yeah, I'll still look at it. I just wanted to make sure. All right, so if we do get this run out of BTC, I haven't really looked at where the main resistance levels will be. So I've been working a lot with trend lines lately. I might want to zoom out and take a look at some of the other time frames to see if we can spot some trend lines. Just with the naked eye now, you can kind of see this sort of forms a trend line. I'd be curious where that goes into the past. So just looking at it now with the naked eye, that just stood out to me because I'm good like that. And I see lines in my sleep. I'd be willing to bet if we trace this all the way left, it probably ends up being relevant elsewhere as a support or resistance. Usually that's the case. Let's see. If we go all the way down. Yeah, so look, that was a pretty strong resistance here. It was big support right here, right? And then it failed. So it can be support and resistance. Here it was resistance. It busted through. Then it was support for a while. Failed. And then it went back up, came back down, and then it became a strong resistance again. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at certain times, these things can be relevant. Like, let's check this out. Watch that. That's pretty cool, right? Just from spotting, again, just think about what I just did. Especially for people who are newer. How awesome was that? So just with the naked eye, I saw these three. 1, 2, 3. I didn't draw a line to see it. I just started looking at the chart. I was like, oh, you know what? It kind of looks like those three line up. Once you look at charts enough, you start to just see that stuff, right? You see a bunch of spots on the chart, and in your mind, you're connecting it with lines. So that's just something that comes with experience and practice. But so I noticed, all right, well, these three look like they're lined up. Let's draw a trend line between those three. Then from there, you say, all right, well, let's extend it back and back test it. And then you do that and you see, sure enough, it was a really strong resistance for a while. Here it was a strong resistance. Here it was a strong resistance. And it was a massive support here that caused a huge bounce. Keep tracing it back. We could even be relevant down here. Let's see if it lines up with that area. That's where it was right there, touching. Not as much. I was thinking it would have been really cool if it lined up perfectly with that. That would have been amazingly impressive, but it didn't. It still lines up pretty well with this, and it might even line up with the bottom, all the way in the bottom. Let me just try to track where this part is right here so I can keep it lined up. Right there, I think. Let me just go. Yeah, I kept it perfectly straight. So, look at that. This main bottom at 3,200. We just figured this out on the live stream. I guarantee you nobody has this. I would bet you anything nobody has this line on a chart anywhere because it's absurd. The only way you would find it is by just messing around and doing what we just did. So the lowest low from the big dump all the way to 3,200, the lowest low we've ever hit since 2017, is the beginning of a trend line that is still valid right now as a resistance. And if we get above it, it's going to be a massively strong trend line, because how does BTC do when it's above this? Let's see. This time it was above. I know it went bit down and back up, but once it gets like above it, it actually runs. We got a run to 14K, literally straight up to 14K, right? Came back down. We bounced off of it, got a really big bounce of 42%. And then it wasn't as relevant anymore. But even after this, even moving above it there was a 20% run on BTC, which is huge. So now that's going to be a key resistance. But if we were to break above it, that could be potentially epic. So that would be a really cool thing to keep an eye on. Let's do... what'll stand out more, because I don't use very often. I don't use pink very often. Just watch. I'm going to refer to this trend line in the future. Nobody else is going to know what we're talking about. Nobody else is going to know where the hell that trend line came from. But in the future, this trend line is going to be very relevant. It's going to be a major resistance or a major support and launching off point, one or the other. I would bet anything on it. I can't get over that. That's so sick. So just by spotting 3 random points on a chart in your mind, saying, all right, that looks like there's a pretty close line between them. You draw that line and you start extending it back piece by piece, and you find that it was the exact bottom of the main BTC correction from 2017. December of 2018, 3,200. Okay, that's awesome. So, on the way up, that's going to be a main resistance. I can't believe I just found that. That's really cool. So we're going to have some trend lines at play. That'll be a resistance. We can extend that outward, actually. Let's see. So, yeah, like when I said, we can go up to high 11s potentially, even up more. I don't think we'll get all the way up to like 13, but I think based on the weekly, I think there's a really good chance we could go on a big run for several weeks, like a really, really nice bull run. And then we get that big correction that the monthly calls for, which could last 2 or 3 months minimum. Or what could happen if we're bullish enough, you could get a short-term, month-long dump, and then the run continues. It just dumps enough to bring that oscillator back down out of that overbought territory. So it could play out that way. We'll have to see. But that's very, very bearish. Once we get to that point, once we get to the point where that monthly candle looks like it's a reversal, I would be shorting Bitcoin massively so. But we got plenty of time before I have to worry about that. short term, I expect a very, very bullish move. The daily and the weekly are both bullish simultaneously. It's a really, really bullish indication, especially that weekly. But as we continue running up, there will be other resistance levels. Obviously, that trend line we found is going to be key. And then besides that, let's look at where the tops are. So there's 10.5 is a major resistance. Obviously, we have to get above 10K. 10K has been a really strong resistance. 10.5 is going to be another extremely strong resistance because that's exactly where we topped out on that run, exactly where we topped out on that pump. This was a quick pump that got instantly rejected from 10.5. That was a consistent run that got rejected from 10.5. This time it didn't quite make it to 10.5 because the trend line held it back. But it got to 10.38, 10.3 and change. So that'll be a key resistance. 10.5 is key. 10,000 is key. Obviously, 10K has been a consistently strong resistance every time we try to push up. So we got 10K, we got 10.5. Other resistance levels besides that. There's some There's going to be resistance at 10.85. Well, maybe a little higher. You're right there. No, that's where I said 10.85. Yeah, 10.84, 10.85. We're pretty much right there. And then after that, just purely horizontal support and resistance I'm talking about here. This at 11.8 looks right around there, but this is on the daily. I'd have to look at the 4 hour because it's hard to tell when you have that few candles. They all just look like wicks at that point, so it's really difficult to tell what's going on looking at the daily. So based on the 4 hour, that 12.2 area would be strong resistance. 10.8. I don't see anything that's like a good horizontal support and resistance in the 11s. This is probably the closest where it was support and then resistance would be right around 11.5, a little bit under, so 11.4 and change. Let me show you where I could actually. So here it was resistance, barely broke up. Here it was support. Over here, it kind of wasn't that relevant, but at times it was. Like here, it was a resistance. Here, it was support. Here, it was support on a big dump. So it's like it was an iffy support and resistance. And then as we moved over and got to this point, it became a more consistent support and resistance. It looked a lot stronger over here. So once we get to that point later, next time we're up in the mid 11,000 range, it's not a sure thing that it's going to be a strong support and resistance. It may be just a minor one, but I specifically have it saying minor because it wasn't a very strong support resistance before. It was sort of so-so. But that's it, roughly, for horizontal supports. Other than that, there's trend lines, there's fib extensions, and there's fib retracements, and other ways. There's EMAs and the Ichimoku cloud, all that stuff. Those are all dynamic supports that will be there later on once we see where it's trending. But as far as purely horizontal supports from prior trading ranges, these would be the main SRs I would look for based on the daily. As you go down to the lower time frames like this, I could tell you at 10,250 roughly is a resistance. That's a much more minor resistance. The main ones are going to be here where these big runs got rejected, or here where this big spike up got rejected, or here where this big pump attempt got rejected. Those are going to be the stronger ones. Other than that, they're going to be mostly minor support and resistance levels. Okay, last thing, and then I gotta go. I was gonna look at RSR, so when he shuts the fuck up about it, let's do that. You're still right on my entry on XTZ. Again, I think we have another 35 minutes of this candle. Next candle, there's a really good chance. If that next candle dumps, it's gonna dump. I'm gonna get stopped out. If the next 4 hour candle pumps, I think that's confirmation we're going to break up along with the cloud. But if it does dump into the cloud, this trade's over. I'm getting stopped out. Like I said, comp is coming down with that stoke, so that's good. I'll be able to get back in. I think it's going to fail to break above the 55 EMA. We'll see how low it gets, and then I might get in because the next time it moves up on the third attempt, it might actually break up and hold above the 55. And if that happens, there's a good chance it could break into the cloud, which means it could break across the cloud and go all the way up to 200 potentially. There's a lot of potential there. Still pissed that I didn't get into H bar, but hopefully it comes down. I can get an entry. I'm not getting it now. It's just I'm overpaying way too much. I should have listened to Bobby last night when he told me to. But look how overbought the Stoke is. It has to come down. Even if it's a small correction, it has to come down a little bit. NKN is holding nicely. Tomo is recovering. I actually said that I was going to sell it, but I haven't done that yet. So maybe I can get some money if it gets a little pump here. Maybe we get an early reversal in the 4 hour. Maybe this thing just keeps running. I was thinking just selling it and then I can buy it back later, but it's going back up. Yeah, not selling it yet. I'm going to give it a little bit of room to work. I want to see what she can do. I want to see if she can give us an early reversal and push up higher. This just looks too aggressive. It has to correct. Screw it. Since my last entry, with this little bump right here, I'm back up to 33% profit. Hold on, I'm just going to sell it really quick. I'm going to get out. Come on, hold. XTZ. Right there. That's it. That's the support. That's the exact level we want to hold at. Like, exactly where it is. It filled my lower entries. Literally, like, to... it was to the penny almost. It hit that 0.5 in the top of the cloud. That's the support right there. It's sitting. It's pushing into the support right now. It has to hold for 30 minutes. If it can stay there for 30 minutes, it's going to bounce. I'm going to make good money on this trade. If it fails and drops into the cloud, it's just going to dump much further, and I'm out of the trade. What else was I just looking at? I don't even remember now. Oh, NKN is dumping. Fucker. BTC better not dump. Maybe I should move my... I have a lot of money in this BTC trade. It's leveraged too. I started really low risk at 0.75%, but just in case, because like I said, the trend lines can always fail. I'm just kind of betting on the odds. Statistically, the probability of making money on this trade is high. I have a statistical edge that it will go up from here and the support will hold, but if the support fails, I need to be able to mitigate my losses, so move my stop loss up to like 91.10, 91.20 area. 91.10, 91.12 would be good. Then I'll be risking about 0.4%. Just to protect myself just in case. Oh yeah, I gotta finish selling that 212. I am changing. All right, so I set 2 stop losses for BTC here, where for half of my position, I'm using the original 0.7 BTC just to have extra leeway in case that minor support right here where this wick hit, right where all these wicks were hitting. See all those wicks right there? And then this wick hit there too. In case of a quick dump, that may wick down to that same level. My SL's a little bit lower, so a little under 9,100 essentially. That's 0.7% below my entry. And then I'm putting 50% of my position under that stop loss. And then I just set a second stop loss. So I have 2 stop losses. Half of my entire BTC trade has a stop loss to sell if it hits that level under 9,100. And then the other half, I have a stop loss that's only 0.4% below my entry, which is around 9,110. All right, so Artrobot said he wanted to look at BLZ. I'll do that, and then I gotta go. Any good ETH setups? I haven't looked at ETH recently. Kids are starting to fuss around, so I think they're going to be up soon. ETH is going to follow BTC, so if BTC stays bullish like I think it will, then ETH will follow. It'll probably actually outperform BTC. It'll probably outperform BTC, but I may end up getting into BCH and ETH specifically because both of those I think will outperform Bitcoin if Bitcoin does stay bullish like I expect. But ETH, very similar to what we have with BTC, similar upwards trend line here. Got support from the Ichima dynamics, the 55, the 99. It just has to get above the cloud, and then there's one minor resistance at 245. As long as BTC stays bullish, ETH should do pretty well. Some stuff looks like it's jumping everywhere with the color changes over here. XTZ still holding. Come on, just 30 minutes. Hold there for 30 minutes, and then I can make some money. Yeah, there we go, comp. See if I can get a rough idea. Yeah, let me look at BLZ. In 1 second, let me just see. I'm trying to see where we may bottom out on comp. Oh, that would be sick. If I could get in all the way under like 145, that could be a potential amazing entry. Yeah, we barely moved up on that last Stoke cycle. I'm going to set an alert down here, like set an alert at about 148, 147, 148. So I can get notified if it dumps further. Then I may start setting some buy orders on comp. All right, BLZ, and then I'll get the kids up. Fundamentally, be careful on comp, what he says. This would be a day trade. I don't care about the fundamentals particularly, but I would do it as a short-term trade just because you can see this trend line, right? Every time it hits that trend line, we get a nice bounce up till it hits the resistances, then it gets rejected. That would be the play. I would buy in here, and then I would sell for 15, 18, 20% profit when it gets to the 55 EMA and the bottom of the cloud. And then if it were to break into the cloud, then it goes on a huge run. But that would be an easy 15, 20% profit if it can do that. All that we need to do is buy as close as possible to this trend line support. That's the goal. If I can get it under 145, I would bet 20 grand I'll make money on this. Well, I would be betting 20 grand to make money on it, I guess. It's the same thing. All right, BLZ, right? I promised. Okay, BLZ, and then we're done for now. But I'll do another live stream tonight. I know a lot of people couldn't come now. I didn't give notice. I just was like, hey, you want to jump in the stream? All right, so BLZ doesn't have a USDT pairing, so I'll have to look at it versus BTC. Well, there's no TA to really do on it. It's just a pump. Huge volume, money flowing in. So they have some sort of event going on or something. I wouldn't buy it. I don't buy into huge pumps like this. I would have bought it maybe when it was close to the 55 EMA. Not here. It didn't get far enough. I actually, if I was paying attention to this, I would have bought it right here. Look at that. Is that not like a perfect example of everything I just taught you for this entire live stream about how my model works? It was riding the 55 that consistently. I would have either bought here, and then if I saw this and it was going up, I would have said, I'm going to wait until it gets back down and gets back to the 55 EMA to enter again. That's exactly what happened. That would have been where I would have bought. So I wish I had spotted that, but my time machine only allows me to go to the future. I can't go back in time and change things, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have gotten the clap so many times. All right, this is just too out there. I can't do much with it from a TA perspective. It's just too far above all of my supports and everything, so I don't really have much to contribute there. Shorter time frame on the hourly, it's correcting. I would let it correct after a pump like that. Now, I don't know if this pump is just based on rumors of some fundamental event or something. I'm not sure. So maybe you guys can tell me. But these huge green candles, it's just pumping like crazy. So that was either a pump and dump or they have some sort of announcement and everybody's just buying it. You can see the volume spiked up and is tailing off, so I wouldn't jump in right now. It's way, way, way too risky. Alright, BTC's correcting now. I'm gonna get stopped at XTZ. I did get stopped out of XTZ. Fuck, why didn't I get an alert? God damn it. Oh, look, it wicked exactly to that support, too. I can't buy right back in now. After getting wicked out like that, I might just have to sit there and take it. Look, that's the main support. That's what I said. I don't know if it's going to get all the way down there. Look at this. All these resistances, right? Super rejections, big supports. That was the main one. I didn't know that it would get all the way down to it. Oh, I wish I had my stop loss just below that. I'm going to have to wait this out. There's still 20 minutes left in this candle, so this might just be one of those situations where it goes on a run and I completely miss out, which is okay. It happens. I'd like it to go lower. If I'm already stopped out anyway, I'd rather it go all the way down to the 618. Then that might be a potential play. I don't know why I didn't get a notification, so I'm going to get one hopefully next time if it gets down to the bottom of the cloud. And then just hope everything else holds on this correction. Looks like H-bar's coming back down a bit, which is good. So BTC has the... It's 20 minutes left on this candle. We may get one more red candle on BTC where I don't think it would break the support, the trendline support, but I don't know if we're ready to reverse on the 4-hour yet. So we'll see. By the time I do another stream tonight, I'll know better what it looks like. Because I got to see what the next candle does. There's 20 minutes on this candle. Once this candle ends, the next candle will be a stronger indication. Because if the next candle is actually bullish, then we're getting a 4-hour Stoke reversal. If the next candle is red, then we're going to just keep moving sideways and slightly down. Should stay right along the trend line at least. But but we're not ready to reverse yet. We might still have to get 1 or 2 more candles before we could actually reverse with that trend line. So we'll see. As long as the trend line holds, everything's gravy. All right, that's it. I will do another stream tonight. Probably around, I'm in Boston. For those who don't know, it's 3:40 right now for me. The kids go down at like 9, so I'll probably do a stream. I usually like eat late after the kids go down, so like 10. A lot of the time I start streams at like midnight and shit, but I'm gonna try to just do a little earlier. Instead of 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd like to see if I can stream a bit earlier, so I could go to bed at a reasonable time, because staying up to 4 or 5 o'clock every night trading and arguing with retards on Twitter is gonna send me to an early grave. Anytime win. All right, I will. Oh wait, I never looked at RSR, right? Winnie kept asking me to check it out. So it was correcting, and then it started pumping again. You said, right? Yeah. It might be a little bit too late. So, how does this follow the Stoke? Is it lining up with the Stoke pretty well? Stoke Max. No, not really. This stochastic's not very accurate. It's kind of all over the place. Probably because the volume's inconsistent on Huobi. So this is another example. It was riding that trend right along the 55 and the 99 EMAs. On these things on bull runs, I'm telling you, just on my Ichima model alone, if you were to buy every time it hits my Ichima dynamic supports, you would be entering every single bottom on the way up, you know? It's pumping now and everything else is correcting with BTC right now. The 4-hour reset, the Stoke reset, and looks really bullish. The last time the Stoke was reset this low, it started a nice bullish run. Same thing over here. Over here it was zigzaggy, so I'm not going to pay attention to that. It doesn't seem to mind when the RSI is really overbought, because there was really, really strong bearish divergence here, right? Check that out. Really strong bearish divergence there. And it didn't dump that far. It didn't correct that far. It went right back to the 55 EMA. Now here, we didn't even have bearish divergence, but it corrected. The RSI is reset a bit. Now it's low enough. This could keep going up. I just can't buy it now. It's too late. It would be too late for me. It's just too out there. I can't buy unless it's very close to a strong support, and there's no strong support here for me. So if you like getting into riskier stuff, just based on how bullish this has looked, it looks like it could definitely keep going. But I wouldn't say that based on my models and my strategies. That's based purely on just if it's a good fundamental coin, like Winnie says, and it has this strong of a bullish run in the middle of, that it's in the middle of, buying it is probably going to yield you some profits, because these bull runs have been extremely profitable. But I can't control my risk very well, so I'm not going for it. All right. What triangle? What were you saying? On what time frame? When? Aiming for it to form a triangle on what? The daily? 4 hour? What are we talking about? That's just straight bull run. There's nothing to it but that. Yeah, fundamentally it's a good play. I'm just saying from a TA perspective, I'm not going to enter into it now. But as like a long-term hold, I may get into it, but I would rely more on the fundamentals for longer-term stuff. Winnie had sent me stuff about a couple different DeFi projects, so I've looked at some of it today. Winnie, I'll DM you later when the kids go down and go over some of it with you. But he sent me a bunch of stuff to check out, so I'm going to do some more research the rest of the day, and I think I'm going to start getting into more of these DeFi coins. So I'll let you guys know what I find and what I like, but he's talked about a bunch of them in the chat already, so just keep an eye on Winnie's notes, because he does really good research. All right, we'll do a live stream later. I'll let you guys know. If you need me in the meantime, just tag me or DM me in the chat, and I'll show up as usual. If you're in any of the trades that I'm in and you don't know what I'm doing with it, don't worry. I will update you when I make changes to my trades, but for right now, I'm mostly stopped out. I got stopped out of XTZ. My other trades are risk-free. I'm just sort of letting them ride. As long as BTC holds the trend line, my other open trades will do well. Tomo I closed, NKN I'm still in, ONT I'm still in, risk-free, and I'm waiting on an entry on Link. I will let you guys know when we're at the point where I'm ready to enter into it. We're pretty close. Well, actually, we're pretty much there. I was waiting for it to get down closer to the cloud. But since we're mid-correction, it's a little bit risky to jump in now. I might just do it because it's Link, and Link is very rarely a bad bet. I'm going to get into Link, actually. This is what I always do. I say, thanks for the stream, we're done, everybody signs off, and then I share like 10 trades. Yeah, it's a little risky because we're still not necessarily finished correcting. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to wait the 15 minutes and see what the next candle does. If the next candle starts pumping, I'm just going to FOMO in. I'll let you guys know, though. I'll let you know what I decide to do. If the next candle in 15 minutes turns green and starts going up, I'm just going to buy in, and then I'll set a stop loss below the top of the cloud, and I'll bank on the top of the cloud holding that support on the way up. But what I'm also going to do now separately is I'm going to put a little bit of money in the Link, just adding into my longer term Link bag, because there's a good chance that this is going to be a big bounce off of this. So I'm buying some Link now, but I'm not doing like a full on short term trade where I have a stop loss and everything. I'm just going to buy some and dump it in my long term bag. Because if I buy now, it could easily go to another lower low and stop me out. The top of the cloud isn't perfect. There's a little wick past it, so I don't think I could get a short-term trade going. Hold on, I'm just ordering some. I'm going to buy something. Yeah, see, look, this is actually a strong horizontal support on the Stoke from before. We're kind of right there. This could be a big bounce. Shit. What do I do? Should I just do it? 12 minutes to go. All right, I'm buying some. I'm making a short-term play. I'm going to put my stop loss and just hope it doesn't hit a newer low. I'll keep my stop loss to 2.5. All right. Fuck. It's high risk. I'm not putting a lot of money into this, but it could be one of those Link entries that's like, I wish I bought right at that level. So I'm going to just do it. But it's high risk. If you can't afford to risk money, do not try to copy this trade. Don't try to jump in thinking that it's a sure thing. It is not. It is high risk. It's in the middle of correcting. I'm essentially getting in at what is like 70% chance the bottom of the correction, but it ain't a 90% thing where I'm like, oh, I'm 90% sure. Yeah, it's high risk. But if it does bounce, it's going to be a fucking beautiful entry. All right, I'm in. I told the group I'm just going to pray that it holds. I still got some for my long-term bag anyway, and this was a really good entry for my long-term link position. Just because I had some profits from I had taken profit on Tomo, and I figured if I'm going to be getting anything else to add to my long-term bags, I already have a lot of link, but I'm not going to buy a lot more. But getting like an extra $500 worth or $1,000 worth here and there could end up being a lot of money because this thing is a powerhouse. Okay, yeah, that's it. Now I really got to stop the stream. The kids are screaming. I can hear them from here without the baby monitor. All right, I'll be on in a bit. Thanks, guys.